The dust devil that had been dancing across the mesa all morning finally settled as Jack Morrison pulled his horse to a stop at the edge of Whispering Creek. 23 years. That's how long it had been since he'd seen this place, since he'd held Alina in his arms and promised her a life that neither of them could have imagined would be stolen away by pride, prejudice, and the unforgiving nature of the frontier. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he dismounted, the leather reins slipping through fingers that had once been smooth and eager to touch her face. Now, at 45, Jack carried the weight of 2 decades spent running from the biggest mistake of his life. The old Apache woman sat by the creek just as the letter had described, her silver hair braided with turquoise beads that caught the afternoon sun. She was washing clothes in the shallow water, her movements deliberate and graceful despite her advanced years. When she looked up and saw him, her dark eyes held no surprise, only a sadness so deep it seemed to reach back through generations. "Are Jack Morrison?" she said in English, that carried the musical cadence of her native tongue. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." He removed his hat, his sandy hair now streaked with gray. "You're Elena's grandmother, Ayanna." She nodded slowly, rising from the water's edge with the dignity of a queen. At 85, she still carried herself with the strength that had helped her people survive the changing world around them. "Granddaughter spoke of you often, even after you left." The words hit him like a physical blow. I got word that she was here, that she never married." Ayanna's weathered face remained impassive, but Jack caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "There are many things you do not know, Cowboy. 23 years is a long time to be absent from someone's life." Jack's throat constricted. "I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you or your family, but I had to come back. I had to try to make things right." "Right?" The old woman's voice carried a bitter edge. "You speak of making things right after you abandoned my granddaughter, when she needed you most." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Jack had rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times during his long ride from Colorado, but none of his prepared words seemed adequate now. "I was a coward," he said simply, "when your people and mine couldn't accept us being together. When the threats started coming from both sides, I thought I was protecting her by leaving." Ayanna studied his face with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of dreams. "Protection," she repeated. "Is that what you call abandoning a woman who carried your child?" The world tilted beneath Jack's feet. His knees nearly buckled as the words sank in. "Child, son," Ayanna said, her voice softening despite the steel in her gaze. "Born 7 months after you rode away like a shadow in the night." Jack sank onto a fallen log, his hat dropping from nerveless fingers. "A son. He had a son. Where ... is he?" "Miguel," Ayanna said, pronouncing the name with reverence. "Alina named him Miguel, after your father, though she never told him why." "He's alive?" The hope in Jack's voice was almost childlike. The old woman's expression grew complicated, layered with pain and something that might have been pity. "He is alive, yes. But Jack Morrison, you must understand something before we go any further. My granddaughter, Alina, ... Her voice broke slightly. "She died giving birth to your second child 5 years ago." The world went silent, except for the gentle babble of the creek. Jack felt his soul tear in half, the carefully constructed walls he'd built around his heart crumbling like adobe in a flash flood. "Second child," he whispered, "a daughter, Maria. She died with her mother." Ayanna's voice carried the weight of unbearable loss. "Alina never stopped loving you, Jack Morrison. Even when the fever took her, your name was on her lips." Jack buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with the force of his grief. 23 years of wondering, of hoping, of planning what he would say when he found her again, and she was gone. Had been gone for 5 years while he was still building the courage to come home. "I should have been here," he choked out. "I should have been with her." "Yes," Ayanna said without mercy. "You should have, but you were not. And now we must deal with what remains." Through his tears, Jack looked up at the old woman who had every right to hate him. My son, where is he? Miguel is not here right now. He took some of our young men up into the mountains to hunt. They should return before sunset. Ayana paused, weighing her words carefully. But I must tell you something about your son, Jack. Morrison. He is not the boy you left behind in Elena's womb. What do you mean? He grew up without a father, hearing whispers about the white man who abandoned his mother. Some of our people filled his ears with poison about you, about your people. Others told him his mother died of a broken heart. Ayana's eyes grew distant. Miguel became a warrior to prove he needed no white father, became a leader to show he was worthy despite his mixed blood, and he became angry, ... So very angry. Jack wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. Does he know I'm his father? Elena told him when he was old enough to understand. But understanding and accepting are different things. Ayana moved closer, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Miguel leads a group of young Apache men who have grown tired of the reservation, tired of broken promises from Washington. They ride the borderlands, taking what they need to survive. The implication hit Jack like a thunderbolt. He's an outlaw. He is a son trying to honor his mother's memory while fighting a world that has no place for him, Ayana corrected. Just as you were a young man trying to find his place in a world that would not accept his love? Before Jack could respond, the sound of approaching horses echoed off the canyon walls. Ayana straightened, her hand moving instinctively to a knife at her belt. They return early, she murmured. Jack Morrison, what happens in the next few minutes will determine whether you live to see another sunset. My grandson does not know you are here, and he will not welcome the surprise. Jack stood, his hand moving to his own weapon. What should I do? You will do what you should have done 23 years ago, Ayana said firmly. You will stay. You will face him, and you will tell him the truth. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder, accompanied by voices speaking in rapid Apache. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs as he caught sight of the riders cresting the ridge above the creek. There were at least a dozen of them, all young men with the hard eyes and confident bearing of those who lived by their own rules. The man leading them was unmistakably his son. Miguel sat his paint horse like he'd been born in the saddle, his long black hair streaming behind him as he rode. He had Elena's dark eyes and high cheekbones, but his jaw was pure Morrison, square and stubborn. At 23, he was the same age Jack had been when he'd first fallen in love with Elena, and the resemblance to his younger self was striking enough to steal Jack's breath. The moment Miguel spotted the unfamiliar horse tied near the creek, his hand moved to the rifle across his saddle. His eyes swept the area until they found Jack standing beside his grandmother, and something dangerous flickered in their depths. Grandmother Miguel called in English, his accent carrying the same musical quality as Ayana's. Who is this man? Ayana stepped forward, her chin raised proudly. This is Jack Morrison, my grandson. He has come to speak with you. The reaction was immediate and volatile. Every rifle in the Apache band swung toward Jack, and Miguel's face went white with rage. Morrison, he spat the name like a curse. The coward who destroyed my mother's life. Miguel, wait. Jack started forward, but stopped when a dozen weapons trained on him. Wait. Miguel's voice cracked like a whip. I have waited 23 years to meet the man who abandoned my mother, the man whose name she whispered in her fever dreams while she died in my arms. The pain in his son's voice cut Jack deeper than any blade could have. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. Forgiveness. Miguel dismounted in one fluid motion, his hand now resting on the grip of a Colt .45. You speak to me of forgiveness while my mother lies in the ground? While her daughter lies beside her? While I have spent my life trying to fill the hole you left in her heart? I loved her, Jack said quietly, the words carrying across the canyon like a prayer. I loved her more than my own life, love. Miguel's laugh was bitter as winter wind. You have a strange way of showing love, Morrison. Night like a thief. I was afraid, Jack admitted, the words tearing from his throat. I was young and stupid and afraid that staying would get her killed. Both our peoples were making threats, saying they'd never accept us together. I thought if I left she'd be safe. Safe. Miguel's composure cracked, revealing the wounded boy beneath the warrior's facade. She was never safe from the pain you caused her. Do you want to know what she said the night she died? She said, tell Miguel his father was a good man who made a terrible choice. Tell him not to let fear steal his happiness the way it stole mine. The words hit Jack like physical blows, each one carrying the weight of Elena's forgiveness and her enduring love. She said that. Those were her last coherent words before the fever took her. Miguel's voice dropped to a whisper. And I promised her I would tell you if you ever came back. But I also promised myself that I would make you pay for the pain you caused. The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle sound of the creek and the nervous shifting of horses. Jack looked at his son. This young man who carried Elena's beauty and his own stubborn streak saw a crossroads stretching out. Before them both, "You have every right to hate me," Jack said slowly. "Every right to put a bullet in me right here and now. But before you do, I want you to know something about your mother that maybe she never told you." Gil's hand tightened on his weapon. "Speak quickly." "The night before I left, she came to me with a plan. She wanted us to run away together, to go somewhere neither of our peoples could find us. She was willing to give up her family, her home, everything she'd ever known, just to be with me." Jack's voice broke, and I was too much of a coward to say yes. I was so afraid of what might happen to her that I chose certain heartbreak over uncertain danger. Something flickered in Miguel's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "Never told me that," he said quietly, "because she was protecting my memory, just like I thought I was protecting her life." Jack took a careful step forward. "Son, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I can't undo 23 years of absence or take away the pain I caused. But I'm here now, and I'm not running anymore." Miguel studied his father's face, with Elena's perceptive eyes. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," Jack said honestly. "What? I want to give you something. I want to tell you about your mother, not the saint everyone made her into after she died, but the real woman. The one who laughed like water over stones and could outshoot any man in the territory. The one who dreamed of having a dozen children and raising them to be bridges between two worlds." For the first time since he'd arrived, Miguel's hand moved away from his weapon. She could outshoot any man. A smile ghosted across Jack's face. She could put 6 shots through a silver dollar. At 50 yards, beat me 3 times out of 5, and I was considered one of the best in Colorado. "She never told me she could shoot," Miguel said, and there was wonder in his voice. "There's a lot she probably never told you. Things she might have, if I'd been man enough to stay and help her raise you." Jack's voice carried the weight of infinite regret. "I can't give you back the father you should have had, Miguel, but I can give you the stories. The truth about who she was, who we were together, before I let fear destroy everything good in my life." Miguel was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching Jack's face for deception or manipulation. Finding neither, he slowly nodded to his men, who lowered their weapons. "You can tell me your stories," he said finally. "But understand this. Morrison, I am not your son looking for a father. I am a man who loved his mother, and I will judge every word you speak by whether it honors her memory. That's all I can ask for," Jack said, as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson.
Jack Morrison sat by Whispering Creek
and began to tell his son about the woman they had both loved. He spoke of Elena's laugh, her dreams, her fierce independence, and her capacity for forgiveness that had apparently extended even beyond the grave. Miguel listened in silence at first, his expression guarded. But as the stories unfolded, tales of midnight rides and stolen kisses, of shared dreams and whispered promises, something in his face began to soften. These weren't the sanitized memories of a saint, but the intimate recollections of a man who had truly loved a flesh-and-blood woman. "She used to sing while she worked," Jack said as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "Apache lullabies her grandmother taught her. She said music was the language that didn't need translation between our peoples. She sang those same songs to me," Miguel admitted quietly. His warriors had made camp nearby, but they kept a respectful distance from the reunion playing out by the water's edge. "She probably sang them to Maria too," Jack said, his voice heavy with loss for the daughter he would never know. Miguel nodded. "Every night. Even when the fever was burning her up, she would try to sing. The shared grief created a bridge between them, fragile but real. As the night deepened, Miguel began to contribute his own memories, stories of Elena's wisdom, her strength, her unwavering faith that someday Jack would return. "She kept your letters," Miguel said suddenly. Jack's head snapped up. "Letters. Ones you sent the first year after you left. She never answered them, but she kept every one. They're in her Bible, along with—" Miguel hesitated. "Along with what?" "A photograph. The one taken at the harvest dance in Tucson. You're both so young, and she's looking at you like you hung the moon." Jack remembered that photograph. Remembered how nervous he'd been when the traveling photographer had set up his equipment at the dance. Elena had insisted they had had it taken, saying she wanted to remember that perfect night forever. "I thought she would have burned it," he said quietly. She said it reminded her that happiness was possible, even if it didn't last. Miguel's voice carried a note of his mother's wisdom. "She told me that some people come into our lives like shooting stars, brief and brilliant, and gone too soon. But they light up the sky while they're there. She always was smarter than me," Jack said, with a rueful smile. "She was smarter than all of us." Ayana interjected from where she sat tending the fire. She knew that love doesn't die just because people make foolish choices. As the night wore on, something remarkable began to happen. The walls of anger and resentment that Miguel had built around his heart started to crumble. Not under the weight of Jack's remorse, but in the face of shared love for an extraordinary woman. The stories became a celebration of Elena's life, rather than a mourning of missed opportunities. But the past couldn't be changed, and both men knew it. The question that hung unspoken in the air was what, if anything, could be built from the ashes of old dreams. It was Ayana who finally voiced what they were all thinking. "The sun will rise tomorrow," she said, poking at the fire with a long stick. "What will you both do when it does?" Miguel looked at his father across the dancing flames. "I have a life here. People who depend on me. I can't just walk away from my responsibilities." "I'm not asking you to," Jack said. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I was hoping maybe I could stay in the area, get to know the man my son became, even if I can't be the father he needed." "And what about your life in Colorado?" Jack was quiet for a moment. "I never really had a life there. I had work, I had a house, I had neighbors who nodded politely when they passed me on the street, but I never had a family. Never let myself get close enough to anyone to risk the kind of pain I felt when I lost your mother. So you've been alone all these years?" "By choice. I convinced myself it was what I deserved." Jack's voice was barely above a whisper. "But sitting here tonight, talking about Elena, learning about you, I realize I've been serving a life sentence for a crime I committed against myself as much as anyone else." Miguel was quiet for so long that Jack thought he might have pushed too hard, asked for too much. But when his son finally spoke, his words carried a surprising gentleness. "There's a ranch about 10 miles north of here. Old Mexican place. Been abandoned for years since the family moved to California. The house is solid, and there's good water. If a man wanted to start over, he could do worse." Hope flickered in Jack's chest like a candle flame in the wind. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying the past is gone, but the future isn't written yet." Miguel stood, brushing dust from his pants. "I'm saying maybe it's time both of us stopped letting fear make our choices for us." As dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold, Jack Morrison watched his son mount his horse and prepare to ride out with his men. The conversation had changed everything and nothing. The years of separation couldn't be erased. But perhaps they could be forgiven. "Morrison," Miguel called as he gathered his reins. "There's something else Elena wanted me to tell you if you ever came back." Jack's throat tightened. "What?" "She said to tell you that love isn't about never falling down." "What?" "It's about getting back up and trying again." Miguel's smile was small but genuine. "She said you were the getting back up kind of man, and she was. Willing to wait as long as it took for you to prove her right." As the riders disappeared over the ridge, leaving only dust motes dancing in the morning light, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced in 23 years. The possibility of redemption. Elena was gone, and nothing could change that. Their daughter was gone too. A loss that would always ache. But their son was alive, and in him lived the best of both parents, Elena's wisdom and strength, Jack's stubborn determination to do what was right. It wouldn't be easy. Building a relationship with Miguel would take time, patience, and a willingness to accept whatever scraps of connection his son was willing to offer. But for the first time since he'd ridden away from Whispering Creek as a young man, Jack Morrison felt like he had a future worth fighting for. Ayanna approached him as he stood watching the empty ridge. "You will stay then, if you'll have me? If Miguel will let me try to earn a place in his life?" The old woman nodded approvingly.